Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're consuming this broadcast. Welcome to Bus Talk, a podcast about work-life balance, your work-life balance, if you will. So the wise, woke, wobbly, or even the weird ones, all are welcome. In Bus Talk, we have no quick fix solutions. We have no quick recommendations, no instant gratification. Instead, what we try and do is break down the complex, simplify it, and present it to you as best as we can. In the event that floats your boat, then you've clearly tuned into the right show. And if it doesn't, and if you're all set, that's fine too. At the end of each episode, you'll probably have more to think than you did at the start of the episode. My name is Ayan, and I'm going to be your host for this episode of Bus Talk. And as always, I sift through what's happening all around the corporate world and bring one or two topics and do a deep dive on that. In today's episode, I will talk about the recent article on the NDTV website. It says, and I'm reading off the website here, that guilt of asking for leave, Indians on 90-hour work week and toxic bosses. Oh my God, that's right up the alley of Bus Talk. We're going to touch upon, it's almost like a reaction video to some of the, like a channel reaction, if you will. So sit back, relax. For the next 30 odd minutes, I'm going to deep dive. I'm going to read the article and give you some commentary and some reference to context. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts and suggestions on the same. So without further ado, let's jump right off the bat. For those who haven't heard the previous episode, or if you're in some other planet, there is a big hoo-ha going around the corporate world about what's the preferred number of work hours that one should follow. If you were to follow Mr. Narayan Murthy's recommendation, it should be a 70-hour work week. And if you were to follow the recommendation of Mr. Subramanian of L&T, then probably even work on Sundays rather than waste time at home. If you haven't watched the previous episode of Bus Talk, this is the time you'll get a better reference to context, where I've delineated the conversation from an employer and an employee standpoint, so that you get a better perspective. Clearly, we don't live in a world of absolute truths. We live somewhere in the center and sometimes, tilting on either side. So go check that video out. But for this episode, I am going to, it's like a part two in some sense when I go through the article on NDTV. And I'll give you some thoughts and reactions to some of these pointers, because it's very relevant to our conversation today. For the audience that is listening to this, and for those who are tuning in for the first time, this is largely applicable. Whatever that you hear on Bus Talk is largely applicable to folks who are between, say, the 5 to 15, 17-year work X mark. Not to say leaders can't listen to this, or younger, early career stage people shouldn't listen to this, but largely applicable to this. It's like the muddle in the middle. That's the reason I do Bus Talk, is because not much content is directed towards the large workforce that resides bang in the center. There's a ton of content for youngsters, and of course there is plenty of leadership gyan, if you will. So let's jump right in and see what the article says, and I'll give you some thought process, and I'll read one paragraph and then I'll reflect on it, right? So here goes. It starts with, after nailing a rigorous interview process, Swati Bose's, I don't know if it's a real character or a fictional one, but Swati Bose landed a role in a digital marketing company. The first day was filled with smiles, introduction, promise of growth, but what began as a warm welcome quickly devolved into chaos. That's a new word, devolved, okay? De-evolved or decelerated or whatever. All it took was 5 days. Within 5 days, her optimism was replaced by toxicity at the workplace, tears, and ultimately resignation. Her mental health took a nosedive, spiraling into depression. Now, as is the case in corporate world, there are multiple nuances to this, multiple angles to this, and you can present the inference of this as glass half full or half empty, whichever side of the aisle that you are. If you are the employee going through this, then one can justify the action reaction. If you are a leader or a hiring manager or the organization, you can justify the actions thereof. What I will do though is I'll give you a sense from both perspectives for you to think. Like I said, I'm not leaning towards one or the other, whether it is right or wrong, but I'm just going to leave you with some thoughts that if this is meant, did you think about ABC? So here's the first analysis, right? When you hire somebody, and if the person in 5 days feels that the atmosphere is toxic, and this is from the employer's standpoint first, well, what did you expect that it'll be a walk in the park? Now, that doesn't mean that toxicity is justified or, I'm defending toxicity. That's not the point here, before you jump in and misunderstand. What I'm saying is there's always a situation where there is a difference between what you expect and what reality is. There always will be a gap, isn't it? So one needs to develop a resilience that, okay, we live in a world of VUCA, which is volatility, uncertainty, chaos, ambiguity, or whatever, confusion. And so it is a given. Again, like, don't shoot the messenger. This is how the lay of the land is. There is ambiguity, there is confusion. And for all you know, and remember this 3-finger rule, when you're pointing a finger at somebody, 3 things point at you. So did you recalibrate? Did you not research the company? Did you not figure out the company culture? Now we live in the age of internet. So there is ample information available for any organization. Yes, some obscure organization fare you might not get much, but from large organizations, much of the data is available on various websites, right? On various corporate websites outside. You will get some reference to context. You'll get a sense on what the company culture looks like. What's the feedback. Usually, you will see the negative ones surface up more than the positive ones. And so, while you've applied to the company in your mind, and if you're this young professional, when I say young professional, maybe 0 to 10 years. Work X, you need to do some research on what the company culture looks like and ask those questions once the hiring manager Q&A is done. If you're talking to the HR, why would you not ask those questions, right? What the company culture looks like? What is it? What's the difficult part in this role? What do you think are the challenges that one faces within, say, the first year? How does one recalibrate? These are all valid, relevant questions. In fact, what most people end up doing is, as long as they spend copious amounts of bandwidth negotiating on salary, they never ask the other part of it. Takeaway number 1 is probably you want to ask the company culture, the way it functions, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, as compared to your existing or previous role. Like in our organization, it wasn't very. We could work hybrid, perhaps. It wasn't mandatory to arrive at office at 9 o'clock in the morning. Even if you walked in at 10 was fine. How is the situation in your company? And the guy would say, no. In our company, 8:30 is a sharp start. Even the bosses land up, their bosses land up, everybody on the dot. It's not taken well if you arrive at 8:32, that kinds. Just give you an example, right? And so you get a sense that, okay, this is not my cup of tea. Right, and then you keep on adding just not the culture questions. You could have scenario-based questions basis the challenges that you faced in your existing organization in the role. That in this situation, my compensation got, they would release salary only on the 6th of the month or the 7th of the month. How is it in this new organization? No, we without fail, our salaries go out on 1st of the month. But there are days, we are a growing organization. Sometimes it is delayed to 10th of the month, but we make sure that nobody's compensation is missed out or something like that. So there is adequate recourse. Now that could raise a red flag, and you would say, oh my God, this is not done. My EMIs will trigger, and so on and so forth. And so I cannot do that. So there are ample signs for you to pick up. So just don't focus on negotiating the compensation, but also focus on the other aspects of the company. It will then make sure that you don't have a nosedive 5th day into the organization, right? So this is from the employer standpoint. Now let's look at it from the employee standpoint. Now it could well be that you are joining an organization which, despite your best efforts, you do not know what's going on. I'd still think 5 days is a little too less for you to, spiral into, oh my God, into chaos. Typically, it happens at the, 3rd or 4th month. You've spent 1 or 2 pay cycles. You've kind of the classical as cliched as it might sound, the honeymoon is over kind of phase is past, and the reality, people have settled down. You've bust all the bubble sheets, and now you are well and truly integrated, and then you realize, well, there are just too many things that you are surprised with as what you thought earlier. So that's typically when it happens, and 3 months is a good time to recalibrate whether you want to invest the following 10 months, 12 months there, or 11 months there, or you don't want to do that. Bear in mind, it is a function of the career stage that you are in. Now, for very early career stage, say 0 to 5 years, it's sometimes okay to, and it cuts both ways, right? So there is no black and white. It cuts in the way that you're not completely aware of where you want to be, and you don't have a full clear picture. And so you can get frustrated about, oh my God, this is not what I expected. The idea is to power through that, and as is the case in most cases, over a period of time, you begin to realize how you begin to mold yourself, pace yourself, align yourself to the company culture. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And then you realize you were just being too rigid about it at the start. It's also okay when you're a early stage career person, and you realize this is just, it's coming from inside, right? That this is not your cup of tea. You just kind of made a horrible mistake, and you find out newer things that did not exist earlier, and that does not float your boat at all. In that case, you hit the eject button and say, okay, yep, I tried. I don't think I have it in me to invest. Bear in mind, corporate world is a very small place, and one doesn't want to show too many hop, skip, and jumps in a short span of time, especially if it is 3 months. 3 months is that time where you can't hide it completely, but you can have a story around it that, yes, you did join an organization. However, it was not suiting to your culture. So you'll have to think of the narrative that you want to share at your next interview, because the next hiring manager will ask you, why did you quit this organization in 3 months' time? So you should have an objective answer, and it cannot be an emotional outburst. Like, oh my God, I didn't like the color of the sofa, or I don't know, I'm just exaggerating. I'm saying something very frivolous or very light. It can't be that, right? It has to be something very solid, and come up with 1, 2, 3 examples, and then that's why you took a call. Bear in mind, a lot of people might even get a little spooked, saying, oh, this person quit the job in like 3 months because they didn't quite like the work that was being offered. Then why didn't they check right at the interview? So people are going to view it with a certain degree of skepticism. So bear that in mind. But is it better than mentally draining yourself for the foreseeable 10 months, or doing 1 year? If you can push for 1 year, try and do that, because it's relatively easier to show that you persevered, you gave it a full thought, you gave it a full shot, you gave all your efforts, to see to it that 1 year you spend some time to acclimatize, to accustom, but it didn't work out. So you then probably move out at the 12th or 14th month, which is still a easier narrative to sell to your next organization than quitting in 3 days. Quitting in 5 days, that's tough. I mean, you can erase it from your trajectory, but if you have submitted the papers, EPF has gone, a whole bunch of things have been activated, bank accounts have been set, and winding that stuff down, or it's a little bit of a messy affair. So, like I said, try, if you have signed up for an organization, at least give it 1 year. And then take a call after that. And this is if you're an early stage career. Now, if you're at that middle stage, 10 to 20, 10 to 22 or thereabouts, I would imagine it also depends on how your 0 to 10 has been. If your 0 to 10 has been with 1 or 2 job changes, I guess it's okay. If your 0 to 10 has been with like 4 job changes or 5 job changes, and then again you want to change in 1 year, and when somebody does a summary of your resume and says at the about 14-year mark you have about 8 or 7 job changes, roughly you last about 1.5 to 2 years in a role. Why is that? Why so? So prepare that response in your mind? What will be your response, right? So if you're a senior leader, more than 20 years, you've crossed your 20 years and you've done perhaps 4 or 5 changes, spending time about a year, people will, for leadership roles, they understand that the highest leadership role is probably a 3-year journey. If you have spent any more than 3 years, you are in bonus time and you've done fantastic, or there is some change, or you've added a new portfolio. There have been instances where people have been at the top for a very, very long time. Great. But typically the load at the leadership at the highest levels is very high. So 1 year is little too less. Anything about 2 years and above, I guess it's a good thing, unless there are some extenuating circumstances, which you will be able to, given your experience, and people will also look at your profile as a whole. Like in 25 years, if you have done 3 or 4 job changes, and then this one time you have made a 1-year change, then there must be some reasoning to it. So as long as you're able to narrate the reasoning behind it, I think you should be good. So you just see, we've just gone through one paragraph and there are so many facets to the story. It's so difficult to just succinctly put a blanket cover and say this is right and this is wrong. Because the way it is articulated, it almost seems like here is the poor victim and here is the bad company, which is generally not the case, right? Let's move on. The next is, of course, a more recent instance of Anna Sebastian Perel of ENY. The employee allegedly died of stress 4 months after joining the company last year, and her mother wrote to ENY chairman, Mr. Memani, that the culture seems to glorify overwork and neglect the very human being behind the role. As I said earlier, there are always multiple sides to the story, how we balance expectations. And I'm not in favor of either the corporate or the employee, because idea is to present a neutral point of view, right? So what do you do? Is it true that, big tech or big four, the work pressure, workload is high? Of course there is. And I'm going to go a little philosophical on this, right? If you think of a aeroplane, right, like a aircraft, think of who gets paid more. There are two categories of people responsible for a aeroplane. So think of the cabin crew and think of the pilot and co-pilot and everybody. So in your opinion, who carries a more complex role? No prizes for guessing. The pilot. It's not to say that the cabin crew's role is any lesser or anything, but clearly the responsibility, the complexity, the enormity of carrying the entire aircraft, 150 passengers, is a more complex role, which is why there is more pressure in it. Therefore, more pressure, that's why they get paid more, right? So in similar analogy, in the more complex your role is, the more complex your job is, it is unlikely that there is going to be less pressure. Nothing to do with ENY or anybody else. Globally, everywhere, in every aspect of life, the more complex your role is, the chances of you getting paid higher. The more simpler your role is, it's directly proportional. You get paid lesser, relatively lesser. So along with more pay, automatically it is assumed you will get more pressure. I'm trying to think of roles which pays you more, or you are executing a complex role which has no pressure, which pays you a lot but doesn't, suck the air out of you, if you will. Unfortunately, like I said, don't shoot the messenger here. I'm just trying to think, and if there are any such roles, do leave a comment or suggestion. But that's the way, in general, the way of the world works, that you will get paid more, but you will also sacrifice more. And it's an individual choice, right? And as sad, as tragic as the case might be, because everybody doesn't handle pressure the same way. Like in the previous episode I mentioned, there are people who have this innate ability to thrive under pressure. Think of some of the sporting greats, right? When they're not scoring well, and they're about to be exited from the team or eliminated from the championship, and sometimes they produce some of their all-time best. Like when their back is against the wall, they rise and thrive. That's not everybody's cup of tea, right? A lot of people crash and burn. Like they cannot do that. And it's incumbent on the hiring manager, on the leader to figure out in their team who can and who cannot handle that degree of pressure and complexity. Now, it's very difficult to, we don't have the AQ, Antaryami quotient, where it's very difficult to figure out unless you tell them. So if you're an employee feeling the heat, feeling the pressure, and it's getting onto you, please don't bottle up. Talk to people. Tell them that, I just need some breather. Hold on. It's all right. Don't fear losing a job. Talk to other people. Have a mentor in the organization, right? If person A is your direct manager, there's nothing wrong in talking to person B who could be a mentor. So don't bottle up. And then what happens is when you bottle up, it snowballs. It becomes the problem could be this much. It becomes that big. So the idea is not to inflate the whole problem. Idea is to deflate it, break it down, treat it in small parts. And most of all, don't assume. Don't assume that it is something. So talk to people. Chances are the pressure will be better balanced. Now, in your mind also, if you're a leader who is sensing, it's very important that people be promoted after due diligence to on managing people. It's just not, for example, if you're a sales manager, please remember you're not a collections agent. That you just don't go around the room and say, "Kitna banaoge aaj?" or "How much will you earn? How much revenue will you get?" And that's not the goal, right? The goal is to develop a team, solve problems for the customers, and identify the set of people who can take the pressure, who can do a stretch project, and those who can't. Not all are going to be hunters. Somebody is going to be a farmer. So hunter farmer gatherer. What is the mix that you will try and do, right? And so very important that senior management or the people responsible for the managers keep doing this check. That is the manager capable enough to manage a team? Just because a person is great individual contributor, and as a career progression you promote them to a people management role, it is important to also coach them, guide them on how to handle people and not just extract work. So there is work to be done on either side. It's very tragic that somebody took their life, and I can't even imagine the pain, the sorrow that the parents must be going through. Heartfelt condolences to the family. Stay strong is all we can say. Our prayers, thoughts with you and the family. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. And for any of you listening to this who feel pressured at work, my only humble request to you is don't bottle up. Talk to people. Seek help. And if not at the workplace, anybody else. Because if you don't say, we won't know. And trust me, all of management bandwidth is perpetually maxed out, right? So it's never that. And that's the way, I don't know if capitalism sometimes works like this. Either you're growing or you're dying, right? There's no hanging in between. So, and I say that metaphorically, please don't take it literally. When I say growing and dying, what I mean is either you have to, grow double digits hard, or, then you can't be, if you're not there, then it's the other way around. Managing a mediocre performance is very difficult. It's very, very tough. So don't take it literally. Do not misunderstand. But yeah, just on a concluding note on that segment, it's as much a responsibility for the employee to speak up as it is for the employer to understand those who can't and enable and give them the platforms to speak up, right? That's very important. Next, across industries, employees are battling toxic workplace environments that prioritize profit and performance over mental well-being. That's exactly what I was trying to say. That is capitalism. And so what happens is the difference between haves and have-nots continue to widen. life is unfair, and very rarely you will have all the stars align and everything will be fair. If that is the case, it will probably be socialism, which you don't like, you want to be on the other side. Then there will be a time where you will be on the right side of luck, and sometimes you will be on the left side of luck. In the sense, sometimes you will get unlucky despite having done everything, every darn thing right you have done. You'll still not get the promotion, the credit, the what have you. And then there will be times when you probably don't deserve it, you will get it the other side. So that forms the bedrock, this bedrock of toxicity, right? That forms the bedrock of politics, that forms the bedrock of heartache, frustration, and blood pressure. These are things that we sign up for, right? We don't sign up for heartache, blood pressure, but it come to us. We sign up for the role, but knowing that when we sign up for this role, these are the things that come with it. To think that, like I gave the analogy before, that I will be in a very big company with a very complex role and it will be a walk in the park is a fallacy. That doesn't work at all. And so the recent remarks by Mr. S.N. Subramanian, chairman of L&T, have triggered debates about the workplace culture at the cost of overworking. In his widely circulated video, Mr. Subramanian suggests that employees should work 90 hours per week, including weekends, to stay competitive. And again, if you haven't seen the previous video, do see that. Again, I'm not defending, idea is not to defend Mr. Subramanian's comment, but only give you a reference to context, that we do not live in absolute truths. When you look at it from a leadership perspective, trying to build something, you need more time, and if you get more stuff done in limited time, you want to stretch time. How does that happen? Now, does it literally mean that you need to work on a Sunday? In many cases, no. In many cases, yes. It depends on the role level, situation, wherever you are. It also should be your individual choice to accept or reject that. You shouldn't be forced to do that. I think there was some commentary around staring at partners and all that. Please, that's an individual commentary, and I can't take any explanations on that. Whether we choose to stare at our partners or not, it's a completely personal choice. But I think the reference was more metaphorically, where in order to get or build something bigger, if that means I have to sacrifice some part of family life, then that's what I need to do. Now, so right or wrong, I cannot comment on that, but I can only say that separate the role from the identity. Do not mix the two. You are paid to execute a role, and some of the commentary is for that role. It's not directed towards you, the person. The person is very different. In your mind, separate the two. That whatever feedback you're getting from your manager or your management is directed towards the role that you signed up for. It's not the person that you are. So if you can compartmentalize, easier said than done. If you can compartmentalize, chances are you will deal with it a little better. Next, feed the mule. The notion of 90-hour work week harkens back to the coal mining era, and there is some analogy of really battered and bruised to show that I'm really working hard. And it's sometimes often a farce in modern organizations where, and those colleagues, right, who pretend to look exceedingly busy. Like, why are you so busy all the time? You can be efficient and finish your work in time, but there are people who just are restless, and they will, stress out the entire organization. They will also be, oh my God, this guy just sitting. How lucky that you can go back at 7 p.m. I have to be here till 9 p.m. or something like that, as if that's a thing of pride or something. So, so beware of such people. So continuing on the article, what it says is, even if it is a 4-day week or 7-day work week, 10 plus hours is not commendable at all. It's unhealthy, unsustainable, and ultimately counterproductive. I would kind of agree to that. It's again, think of this timeline, 0, 5-year work X, 10-year work X, 15, 20 years. And you do the enthu curve or the enthusiasm curve. So when you're in the first few years, your enthusiasm is right at the top. You want to win the, prize for MVP. And by the 5th year mark, you would rather, hit the restaurant close by or bar, as it were, and say, I just want to get out of here. So the enthusiasm does drop over a period of time. It's probably the law of diminishing marginal utility, if you will. But the point being, it is unsustainable to have high intensity work for a long period of time. You will be so exhausted that even recuperating will take longer as you progress in age. And if you cannot recuperate, then and a new task is given to you, then your productivity is likely to fall. And so managing this balance, sustaining this balance will need better time management. It will require better workload management. And that's a feedback you should be giving to your management if you're an employer, and if you're a manager listening to this, very, very important to first have a handle on the amount quanta of work that is required, and what is the load per person, and how do you get results by being a little more efficient and reducing the workload, not increasing the workload. And there will be times where we need to do a stretch project and stretch a little bit here and there, but that has to be like an exception. It can't be a standard rule over that's how the way we work. That probably is not right. If moving on, and an average IT guy has a productive attention span of 2 hours, and designated 8 hours make him work 14 hours will reduce it to 1. I don't know what that math is. Mr. Tushar Mondi mentions that, but I'm sure there must be some research behind it. So that's fair. One can understand, right? Sustained intensity is difficult, as we found out for all those who play cricket, like the recently concluded Border Gavaskar Trophy Test match. Having sustained period of attention and focus is where in Team India batters lacked, and that's where we lost, right? According to many surveys, overwhelming number of Indian employees report experiencing workplace stress. A statistic from Gallup report reveals that 86% of Indian employees feel either struggling or suffering in their roles. I would agree and disagree a little bit, because like I said, there is no absolute truth, right? Agree in the sense this conversation is there everywhere. You look at if you overhear parking lot conversations, canteen conversations, cafe conversations, elevator conversations, everybody, if you get to hear that, the common thread is there is stress at work, there is too much work, and I have a nasty boss, I have a nasty manager, I have this and all that. This seems to be a common thread. And this does induce a lot of stress. You cannot disagree to that. Now, on the flip side, it is also true, a lot of the difficult situations arise out of misplanning your career. Nobody's focusing on that aspect of it, right? A lot of people often come to us many a time saying that, I need a promotion because I have debts to pay. Like, why would the company be responsible for your financial planning? Company is responsible for the skill sets that you bring to the table for a designated desirable output which you do, and we will pay compensation. We'll adequately compensate you for the skills or services that you provide. But more often than not, people get frustrated that, I'm not getting a raise here, I have done my job description, and so I should automatically get promoted, and if I don't, then I will switch a job. And that's why many organizations clock 25-30% attrition or even more, much to their surprise and disappointment that you can't keep promoting people for doing their basic job. You do promote people for doing something over and above, something additional, something extra, something which could be an org-wide impact, something which is very complex, something which has never been done before, and could be a whole bunch of examples. And then when you do it over a period of time, it's not like a flash in the pan. You would like to reward that person. So it's a hard-earned promotion. If you ask anywhere, not just in India, anywhere globally, promotions are always overdue. Never they come in advance. Very, very few people, and there'll always be exceptions. A few who will say, I got my promotion like a year in advance. I should have probably got it 2 years later. Doesn't happen, right? So mostly you will hear people say, I should have got it 3 years earlier. I'm still slogging and stuff like that. So it's the order of the day. So yes, there is frustration. just try and separate the frustration from which is of your own creation, right? So try and handle, manage, navigate that part so that you don't add to the stress that is already existing, which is coming out of stuff beyond your control, right? Finally, the article says that there are countries that work fewer hours but achieve better results because their employees are well rested. Corporates have no choice but to reshape their policies as younger generation demand better work-life balance. Mental health counselor told NDTV, Shreya Kaul. Absolutely, I think there is more education required, but I'll also say look at the economic situations of countries. Where India stands right now is India is in the ascendancy. And when you are in the ascendancy, then there are more struggles, there is more work to be done. It's like that bell curve situation, right? When you are on the top of the bell curve, there is a plateaued phase or maybe a slight increase. That's why what you see in, say, United States, where they have reached a certain peak, they've had their ups and downs, but they're on a steady incline in some sense. China is ahead of us, and we are still, taking a steep climb. In fact, we're trying to compress what people have done in, say, 100 years of independence or whatever. We're trying to do that in, 70, 80 years of independence. We're trying to compress. We are trying to learn from the mistakes that other people have done and dodge some of those learning curves and hop, skip, and jump. So it's increasing the pace of progress, but it's also stressing the system out. So it is true that there is a need to have better work-life balance. But when an organization is growing, when a company is growing, when a country is growing, and given the fact that almost roughly 60% of the country is below the age of 30, you have a young population, then the energy levels are high, and you tend to land up put in that much more work, which is not the demography in many of the other geographies where the average working or the average age of the country is much higher. Like, for example, in Japan, it is in the 50s. If you look at most of Europe, is in the late 40s, early 50s. United States is late 40s, I think. So in India is like 27, 28, right? So clearly there is something to think on those lines. Productivity comes from motivation and interest in the work, not from sheer hours spent. Each individual has unique drivers. Forcing long hours on them often strips away that zeal. It's again repeating the same thing, but it is true that oftentimes you will the most exciting thing that you do will get boring beyond a point. Like if you take the most exciting thing, you should ask, right, what is the most exciting thing? I want to be an astronaut and go to fly a rocket to the moon. Very exciting, superb. Do it the first time, you're thrilled. Do it the second time, you're like, oh my God. By the time you do it the third or fourth time, you're like, it's the same button, it's the same cockpit, it's the same moon, it's the same set of stars, and I'm kind of doing the same thing, maybe some different experiments here and there. I guess this is just a hypothetical example, but all I'm saying is, no matter what role you choose, you will hit boredom at some point. Idea is to look inwards and see what you can do to make this little more exciting. Can you bring in some change? It is also very similar to how life is, isn't it? The same pattern of life. You say, oh, I'm getting bored. It's the same thing. I'm meeting the same people over the weekend. We go to the same restaurants. We have the same conversations on Monday. There's so much of monotony. So monotony is a part of life. There is no point in fighting it. It's like, how do you coexist so that it doesn't take the better of you? How do you keep on being ahead of monotony rather than monotony being ahead of you? That's the battle. There is no scientific formula to do it, but I guess people perfect it over a period of time, that you learn to coexist and be slightly ahead. In every workplace I've been, there's been toxicity, whether in terms of sexism, favoritism, nepotism, did I hear, or other issues. It's becoming a bigger problem when toxic behavior comes from senior management. Couldn't agree more. Like, there are many leaders, as is the case with employees, as is the case with the leaders. No two employees are the same, isn't it? So no two leaders are the same. There are many leaders which are, the classical old school leaders will say, ऐसे ही होता है, in the sense this is how it is, this is the way it works, I know. There's a confirmation bias, like, and then there is a recency bias, and then there is a whole bunch of biases that creep into the conversation, and fighting that is very difficult because it impacts the people, it impacts the processes. Unfortunately, there isn't a remediation to that. It is how you navigate around it. I'm just giving a practical aspect. Clearly, the cleanse has to happen all around, but how do you do it? We know the what, but we don't know how. How do we make sure that when we hire a diverse set of people, there is a uniformity? So yes, one, you could say there has to be a strong culture fabric, a framework of operations. So you think of some of the large organizations, they all have a culture code or a leadership principle, or those kind of things which the company revolves around. But even there, you see there are lots of delineations, diversions, and twists and turns, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So yes, it is an absolute issue that there is, favoritism. There are issues. There is toxicity. You can't ignore that. Generational divide. Oh, this is a very interesting thing. Ms. Rao recounted how certain senior leaders fostered an environment of fear and making it difficult for employees to perform without anxiety. I would also say there is a rampant ageism in the industry in general. Given the fact India is largely a young country, oftentimes if you go on to LinkedIn and see the job descriptions, looking for a young, vibrant person. So as if somebody is 35 years old, they are not young, not vibrant, or even somebody is 45 years old is not young and vibrant. Why is that? Right. So there is a degree of ageism where why hire somebody in their 40s? In fact, those people who have lost their jobs in their mid 40s, I really feel for them, because it's very difficult for them to reintegrate into the modern workplace if you do not have great network and connections. Clearly, you can't keep on applying through various job portals, and if you have not networked well enough, there is a passive ageism that is a barrier for you to enter into the workforce all over again. And it is more so in India, and as it is as compared to some of the other places where the average work ex and average age of the employees is slightly higher. And so the article goes on to say that many companies might offer a monthly mental well-being day off, but mostly it's performative, as in if you perform, then you get. Genuine awareness and support for mental health is sorely lacking. I could not agree more. I think until very recently, maybe 5-6 years earlier as well, if you spoke about work-life balance, mental health, these would be often referred to as fancy terms. In many ignorant leader would say that. But I guess there is little more awareness now, and thanks to social media, there's some of the positives that come out of it. So, but the ageism factor still remains. The article goes on to say the age gap often plays a role. Colleagues who are closer to my age are more open to new ideas, but those 10-15 years older tend to be dismissive. It is especially challenging when these individuals are in senior management role, Ms. Rao says. So basically, you're saying the same thing that people of my age, so I'm say 25, so all 25-year-olds think alike. So by that analogy, all 45-year-olds will most likely think alike, right? So, and when the 25-year-old becomes a 45-year-old, how likely are you to be different? Like when some of the 45-year-olds were 25-year-olds, they were different, but you get the drift, right? That the more we think things are different, the more similar they become, and that's the paradox or dichotomy, if you will. So millennials and Gen Z, who now form a major portion of the workforce, prioritize work-life balance, mental well-being over traditional hustle culture. Hustle culture is probably still much prevalent in India, again, from a state of the economy standpoint, as compared to some of the well-developed economies where hustling is almost looked at as a surprise. Like, why are you even fighting for this? You should get it. But the same cannot be implemented for India. In India, if you are talking about 480 people per square kilometer, there is going to be jostle, there's going to be hustle bustle, then there's going to be a crowd for every application. If there are going to be 1,000 plus applicants, there will be a hustle. How else do you survive without a hustle, right? How do you raise your hand and be counted? And so, is it a stress? Absolutely. Does it burn people out? Absolutely. But if I don't think India has reached that stage, economically speaking, where we have figured out all the problems and we have a very stable and say, okay, we'll make sure that every individual is heard and there is a adequate work-life balance for everybody. I don't think, practically speaking, we are there yet. There are similar examples later, and then the topic on stress, then guilt. Managing stress is in a hostile environment is a tall task. Some face guilt for taking time off, while some feel taking vacation or personal time off would send the wrong message to the bosses who they think would perceive them as unprofessional. Yeah, it again is a very company to company, culture to culture thing, difficult to generalize or standardize. There are, again, I said, don't paint everyone in the same brush. There are very progressive leaders, as there are very old school, archaic leaders as well. So for them, if I take they pride themselves in saying, I've been working for 3 years, I've not taken a single day off. And you have just joined like 1 year and you wanted to leave. What is this? So those kind of people do exist, unfortunately. And it kind of propagates also. See, what happens is when your career stakes are very high, right? Typically around the pressure starts to turn on around the 10-year mark, right? 7-8 year mark onwards. The pressure turns. Why? Because 0 to 10, you are most employable. You are easily coachable, moldable. You are easily employable. But at the 10-year mark or 12-year mark, slowly the 6-year-old guy or the 7-year-old guy at a much lesser compensation has the ability to do your job. Maybe not at the same level, competency, sophistication, but they can. And if they happen to be one of the better ones, then chances are they can make a pitch for it. And so under those circumstances, these nuances suddenly bubble up to the surface, where now the pressure is on you to retain the job, to do well. You've already taken 2 home loans, or 1 home loan, 1 car loan. Whole bunch of things are happening. And so now it is incumbent on you to showcase that you are doing well, and it's not about just delivering your job description, but going over and beyond. And so many a times leaders are not sensitized to even the craziness, if you will, of that comment that I've not taken 4 years vacation. Why are you asking for one? And many a times, a lot of people, suck it in and say, yeah, I will, that's great, boss. Amazing. Let me follow on your footsteps. It's a very individual perspective. So keep those things in mind. But I would like to say that there are good leaders who appreciate you taking the time off. In fact, they say to switch off your phone when you have actually taken leave. So it's a matter of you finding them. Yes, finding them is difficult, but they do exist. Don't lose hope. Then the article goes on. Every office has someone whose behavior makes you feel like you're on the verge of resigning or losing your job. It's exhausting and deeply unsettling. My first company had some measure in place, but most others have been woefully inadequate. I just wrote an article on, not an article, a post on LinkedIn, and I'll read it to you, so that basically the summary of that is that each passing generation finds that, as in each existing generation, thinks that the next generation got it easier. We had to do all the struggle, and look how easy it is for them. So the silent generation, they said, I had to get food on the table. I will work for anything, very straight binary. Next came the boomers, right? I walked 5 miles to school, studied with no electricity sometimes. You know how difficult that is? You guys have uninterrupted power supply. How cool is that? If I had that, I would have done much better. Then you have Gen X, the no internet for most part growing up. Life was incredibly tough. We have seen 56 kbps, that modem going, that making that weird sound like space, like we got connected to space, and buffering was not frustrating at the time, right? And so, but life was tough, right? And very tough. You had to still do a whole bunch of things. Millennials got it much easier. Than the millennials clearly think that I am entitled to a 40% hike. Like, why beg for it? Yeah, working is so hard. Why should it be so hard? I'm like, seriously, Gen Z, I need a Pro Max. Can't keep slow scrolling. My life is crashing. So you see, as generations pass, the level of difficulty changes, the level of complexity changes. It's very unfair to compare two generations and say my difficulty was more, your difficulty is less. Probably the right way to think about it is that this is the generation, this is the level of difficulty, and this is what it is. This is your universe of difficulty. It is incredibly complex in the world that we live in. Especially, please keep in mind that have a reference to context. Have a reference to context of not just the organization, the country, the state of career, the place that we, the place that we live in, the responsibilities that we have. If I would just give you a summary takeaway, if you will, is like, please divide it into what you can control and what you cannot control. You've heard this cliche 175,000 times. Here's one more time. So what you can control, break it down into smaller parts, which is, micro, peel the onion or make it into small micro consumable parts and tackle the smaller parts. Get to see the smaller successes. Chances are it will keep you going. Whereas the ones that are very big, not in your control, talk to people and see if you get better advice. And if not, develop some sense of resilience that you have to move on. Your life is much more than this immediate obstacle. And life does, no situation remains the same for a very long time. So it's a plus minus 30-year career. All the 3 decades, 0 to 10, 10 to 20, and 20 to 30, and beyond as well, will not be similar or identical. So what you learned or unlearned in the first decade will be very different in the second. And then by the time you reach the third decade, you'll be like reflecting back and saying, oh my God, I was just getting worked up on so many things, which I'm better matured, better equipped, better informed. So I need not have been that way. That's a lot of information. I thought a lot of things to think about. I hope I gave you some things to think about. Please, please, please do not take any of this content out of context. Please also do not associate this content with my employers of the past, present, or future. It's a very personal opinion curated from interacting globally with so many people across the world, different places, different experiences, different career levels, actually. So I kind of sift through it and try and present, like I said, no recommendations, no prescriptions, but some things for you to reflect and introspect. And as always, if something is working well for you, that's great. Whatever works is the best mantra of all time. If it is not working, try somebody you trust, somebody you believe, and then don't just keep it inside yourself. That's a request more than a prescription. If you liked this kind of a content, this kind of a narrative, do check out www.bustalk.in. That's BASTALK.in. And you will find a ton of previous seasons, whole bunch of things. Most of them is audio. I'm just slowly, very reluctantly, switching into the video part. I'm not very comfortable, but I try my best. I hope you will ignore all the background noise, the clock chiming, the pressure cooker going. It's not a professional studio setup, right? So I hope you don't mind that. I'll try and improve. Love to hear some thoughts and comments, and do share with a set of people who care for something similar to what you heard. And if there are topics that you would like to listen to, then if it's within my syllabus, I'll definitely share some thoughts on that. So leave it in the comments and I will get back to you. You know where to reach me on platform X. It's Ionisms, AAYANISMS hashtag, or you could find me on LinkedIn, Ayan Banerjee, and I will try and connect as quickly as I can. Until we meet the next time, this is your host Ayan, and you are listening to Bus Talk.